Right. Yep, and we'll try to. And I've got one little housekeeping thing up top. We'll try to keep that light, tight, and bright.
I'm going to tell when we ask about Thanksgiving, I'm not going to bring up the stuff that I talked about in the. I'll be like, it was wonderful. I didn't do anything stupid.
Yes, we're live. Bring it up over here. We should have some folks coming on in.
So, did you have 3 different conversations with my grandfather, or did you kind of have the same conversation over and over again?
Kind of. So it just evolved a little bit, right? So it was 3 different classes. So he was doing the same thing, but it was like we went through the first class, and he he had his presentation together, and he put it together.
Tell Janet about his timeline. I think she'll appreciate his timeline.
Oh yeah. So he starts out. He has, hey everybody on YouTube. We're talking about. So I had Zach's grandfather, who's kind of an expert in the Kennedy assassination, come in to speak to my class yesterday. My 3 classes that I teach. So he said, to put things in perspective for you, and he draws out on the board, and he's like, so in 1776, our country, we became a country. And then 82 years later, he marks on the timeline, James Buchanan was president. 82 years after that, I was born. And 82 years after that is today. So I've been alive for 1/3 of the time that the United States has been a country.
Such a good timeline.
Yeah, but yeah, so in the first class, he spent a lot of he didn't know how long the hours were or how long the class was, and it was a lot more of him kind of presenting. And then we started getting some questions. So then for the next class, I was like, why don't we narrow that down to the facts that are accepted, and then we'll take some questions. And then we did a bunch of questions in that one. And then the third one, we kind of did the same thing. And then I asked him to, tell me, why don't you explain what you think happened? And then got into questions. So we got to modified it a little bit from class to class.
I'm so happy you did that.
Yeah.
Honestly, you probably made his year.
Yeah, I'm glad. It was fun having him there. The funny part was, I told him to show up at 11:45. My class starts 11:55. I pull in to the school about a little after 11:30. And I park in the back, but I thought I saw him walking up to the front door. So I was like, oh shit. So I text him, and mind you, it's 20 degrees and it's freezing. It's like 10-degree wind chill.
Yeah.
And I sent a text. I'm like, hey, I'll meet you up at the office. So I pulled around back, go in my room, unlock my room, drop my computer off, go up to the office. Like, I've got a guest speaker coming in. Is here? And they're like, no, not in this, but there's 2 offices. There's like an attendance office and then the main office. Like, oh, maybe it was the other door. And I run all the way to the other side of the school, go to the attendance office. Is somebody coming here looking for me? Nope. And I'm like, well, I got a guest speaker come in. If he comes, let him know. Just call my room. I'll come get him. Blah blah blah. Okay. And then I start to walk back to my room, and then I happen to glance over my shoulder and look outside, and he apparently misunderstood my text because he was just standing outside the door in the cold.
Oh, no.
I was like, oh my God. I let him in. He goes, oh, I was just waiting for you to come get me. I was like, no, in the office. You can come. So yeah, he was like 15 minutes just standing out in the cold.
Poor guy.
That's right. We're starting on time, Kathy. We're starting on time, and we're going to end on time. That's the plan.
What time do we end
this week? Because Janet has been working all. Can you tell us what you were rehearsing for?
Yeah, I have Thrilling Adventure Hour shows this upcoming weekend, which probably doesn't mean anything to anyone.
But
it does to the fans. Yeah, it's great. It's like Paul F. Tompkins and Joshua Malina and Patrick Brewster and Mark Evan Jackson.
I so badly want to go to San Francisco to Sketchfest the weekend that you're doing the show with Jimmy, so I can watch you perform. So I can see some Sketchfest stuff, and so I can just get that much closer to Jimmy.
Yeah,
my hero.
I'll bring you right back, if not up on stage.
Bring me right up on stage. I'm an improviser. You know that I'm an improviser. I've read 3 chapters of that book, so I'm basically got it down.
Yeah,
as you can tell,
it's going to happen.
I formed that sentence.
The Underground has like an improv thing.
The what?
The Underground Laugh Lounge has like a monthly underground, a monthly improv.
Is it a class or a show?
It's like a troupe that comes in, but it's their in-house thing.
Oh, because I would love to take an improv class. I would love to learn. I figure if I can get more into Janet's world, that can get me closer to Jimmy's
I don't know.
world.
I'm not very good
That's
at classes.
exactly right.
So as long as I don't have to attend a class, I'm not very good at this.
I would love to. I would just love to learn something new. The comedy stuff kind of comes in. For those of you who are on Patreon that watch it, all I do is tell stories. It's really not comedy what I do. What Zach does is comedy.
It's
tell
definitely
stories.
comedy. No, you guys both do comedy. It's real.
But I would, but I don't know. I'm fascinated by improv. I love watching improv, and I'm just the kind of person with pretty much anything that I watch someone else doing, I'm like, I want to do that.
Yeah, I get that.
But it is not something that I think you can just do. Now, do you, Janet, as an improviser,
Mm-hmm.
do you think anyone can be taught to do it, or do you think certain people you have to have a certain something to be able to do it?
Oh, that's a good question. I think you probably have to have a certain something. I mean, I wouldn't say it's. I mean, I'm not saying it's like so magically special, but I think, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think it's to really do it and to want to keep doing it. I think you probably have to have a little something.
And I think you have to be, in general, you have to be pretty quick-witted.
I think
you can't teach that.
I think it's hard to, but I think it is. But I always tell people, even if they're not performers, like take an improv class because it just makes you faster on your feet in general. I think. I mean, that's.
Well, I was watching the show that you did with Jimmy and Oscar Nunez and John Ross Bowie, which was amazing, by the way. The parts I watched before I fell asleep because it was so late at night. And I was, when they did the last thing I saw was where they were like, "That's so 80s" or whatever that game you guys were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, how do they do that? You guys were this quick coming up with like.
Oh no, we plant those in advance. That's why I had a fanny pack that I could bring out a Tron toy from. We knew that question was coming.
Oh,
sorry,
well, that sort of
I just broke that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can go and watch actual improv, like total 100% improvised shows, like on Dynasty Typewriter has them, or listen to like the podcast I do with that I did with Paul F. called Spontaneation. Anyway, we got to get going, right?
Right. You need to eat some food at some point. What did you eat, by the way? What was your snack? Was it nuts?
I had nuts and some crackers.
Nuts and crackers.
Very loud. They were very loud. That's why I muted myself. I wish it had been Crunch Berries. That sounds great.
Oh, they hurt the roof of your mouth, but it's worth every bite.
Yeah, exactly. No, there are so many cereals that like make the roof of your mouth raw.
Yeah,
you're like, God, I really.
What's your favorite cereal?
Wanted this
just quickly.
Fruity Pebbles, obviously.
Correct answer.
Oh, those go limp too fast. I like I mean, now I'm a grown up, so I like Chex, like Honey Chex, or like
well, as a grown up, I eat Premier Protein cereal.
As a grown up, you do that. As a grown up, yeah.
Ginny, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Ginny watched our comedy show on Patreon and she enjoyed it.
Good,
so funny,
excellent. I appreciate that.
Yeah, could you because when I was watching it, when I was getting ready to publish it, I know it's like of everybody in that room. I don't just because I work with you, that I can absolutely pick out Janet's laugh out of that entire crowd when you were laughing.
Well, I would like to see it. I can't tell you.
We're all stuck with it. Oh, Liz says Viola might have some words of wisdom for Bob on improv, but the problem is she would think that it said improve. Let me tell you how to improve yourself. Doesn't everyone know? First of all, I'd start by adding an E. You've spelled it wrong.
I was gonna improv that. I was gonna say add an E to the end. Damn it, that was my chance. All right. All right, we're gonna hit record. We're gonna start this show.
Can we put this comment up first?
Record. That's funny, Tiffany. She said that she knows too much about me. That's right. I share too much. 1, 2, 3.
Hi, Brandon. Can I go? Are we ready? Am I supposed to go? Ahoy, friends. Thank you for tuning in to Truth and Justice. You are listening to the Friday Follow-Up for Season 14 and the Thanksgiving week. We are back from our long weekend and ready to dive back into this series. I still have a few notes to address, and we have a lot of listener questions. I'm joined by Bob and Janet, and I'm excited to discuss all of this with them. But before we get into that, Bob, housekeeping?
Yes, big housekeeping. I said it was a little housekeeping to the YouTube people,
sure
just
did.
to not give it away, but it's a big housekeeping. I believe we have an official date and time for the Instagram Live with, it's going to be this. It sounds like we're going to do two. The first one is going to be just me and Rabia because Colin is dealing with it's exam time, final exams where he's teaching at the college, and he says he's just too swamped to do anything right now. So we talked about just me and Rabia doing the first Instagram Live, and then we're probably doing, like, after first of the year, after the semester's over, another one we're thinking probably with Colin. So this Sunday, when you're hearing this episode, 2 days from now at 3 p.m., so it gives you plenty of time to listen to the main episode first, and then at 3 p.m. on Rabia's Instagram. So go follow Rabia on Instagram. We are going to do an Instagram Live talking about the case, the reply briefs, Rabia's kind of input on them. And I don't know. It sounds like we very well may be getting some new information. I don't know that for sure. She's been kicking that around. We'll find it out. But I am super excited to talk with Rabia, to talk with anybody in an open forum, because, as you know, this all started with me wanting to talk to the prosecutors about their take on the case, and they refused. But Rabia is excited to talk about it. So that will be 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time this Sunday on Rabia's Instagram. I'm going to try to figure out a way to capture the audio so that for anybody that can't make the live, now it'll still live. If you can't make it live, you can still rewatch it on Rabia's Instagram. You just won't be able to, like, comment, because we'll be taking, like, live comments while we're doing it. So that will still be there, but I'm going to try to capture the audio so I can put the audio out as an episode for anybody that maybe doesn't have Instagram or doesn't have a chance to watch it there. I don't know. The question is going to be, if I don't know if I can do Instagram Live through my computer or if it has to be on my phone. I don't know.
You better figure this out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. So
okay, is that East Coast time? Sorry, can you just verify and say one last time, like?
Yes, Eastern Standard Time, 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time this Sunday.
Great.
And I don't think we have any other housekeeping. I'm trying to think real quick. No, I think that is it. And so with that, before we get into this week, obviously we didn't have another main episode. So we opened up questions to whatever you want to talk about. We got a ton of good ones. We've got, I don't know, there's probably at least a dozen of them in there. And after we recorded last week, Zach and I were chatting, and he had a few more notes that he didn't get to last week because we were running a little bit long. So I think first thing, so this is still in regards to part 5, where the second half of the part 5 episode, however those numbers worked out. Zach had a few more notes about that he wanted to address. One of them is pretty impressive.
Are we talking about the interview, Jay's interview? Is that the one we're going to start with? The timeline for Jay's interview?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the prosecutor's episode, they discuss Jay's first interview, and they say that Jay had a 55-minute pre-interview that was not recorded, which means they came in and sat down with him, and it was 55 minutes long, and they make a big deal about 55 minutes isn't a very long time.
Not enough time possibly to feed him any information.
Yes. They make a big deal about 55 minutes. That's nothing. These take hours. So there's no way that this could feed him any information. And then they say that he then went in and there was a recorded interview, and it starts at 1:30 and the interview ends at 2:21.
Which is how long?
51 minutes. So that seemed very sketchy to me.
Yeah, I had never caught that until Zach pointed it out. But yeah, it's just the hypocrisy of everything, right? But when he points out that it would be impossible for them to have fed him a story in 55 minutes, but then his entire interview where he shared his entire timeline of everything that he did only took 51 minutes.
Yeah.
Which was less time than they had with him before he started interviewing.
So I don't know, that jumped out to me because they made such a big deal about there's no way 55, we talk to clients for hours. There's no way 55 minutes is enough time for them to feed him any information.
Yeah.
And then the recorded interview ends up being 51 minutes.
Yeah. And as I pointed out to you, interestingly enough, when you get to the patrons already know this, but in the main feed, when we get up to episode 9, or their part 9, where they're actually breaking down Jay's interview. There, they changed 55 minutes to 30 or 45 minutes to, by the end of the episode, the pre-interview was 30 minutes. They literally just changed the amount of time that it actually was for that. I do want to point out, I guess this is kind of a little housekeeping thing. I was just made aware in the YouTube chat by Kate that apparently the prosecutors have announced that they are now going to do a series on the West Memphis 3 case, to which she says, looks like Bob gets to do another reply brief series. That is...
They're not going to say they're guilty. That's my prediction. My prediction is they will not say that those guys did it. They don't always say people are guilty. They've covered tons of cases where they're like, these people were not guilty, or I don't think this person did it, or I'm Team Owl, whatever. Like, they're not going to, just because they're doing it doesn't mean they're going to say that they're guilty.
I hope not. I don't have the energy to listen to their dribble anymore and do this. But I mean, if they start, they need to stop. If they don't want, they need to stop talking about cases.
Well, guess what? What you're doing might be really good for them. You need to watch out, because they're smart people. They might be like, hey, let's just keep picking at Bob because he keeps giving us all this publicity by doing these shows that are about us. No press is bad press, or whatever. Yeah.
I hope that's not the case. I hope that there is not a bunch of inaccuracies that need to be corrected there, because I really don't want to deal with it. And as Sandra points out in the YouTube chat, that one will get Zach fired up too. So that won't just be me.
Yeah, that will come in very hot on this one.
For those of you that don't know, that are newer to the channel, the West Memphis 3 case is how Zach came to be on this show.
Yes.
We kind of bonded over he's studied that case for years before I started covering it. He got excited about, started listening to it, and then that's kind of how we became friends.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Yeah, and then
over that case.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. Hoping for the best.
I think I wrote in on that very first episode, and then Mike read the question. You're like, wait a minute, I know who that is.
Yeah, he lives down the street. Yeah. Okay, so sorry, didn't mean to derail you there, but yeah, so the whole hypocrisy of the 55 minutes isn't enough time to tell a story. Also, it took Jay 51 minutes to tell the story is interesting. Yeah. And then you had one other note that we didn't get to.
So something that I had never heard of before, again, I don't know a lot about this, but is the fact that this whole idea that Hay went to California, and that they're, Anon's telling people that Hay went to California, and everybody at this party just thinks that that Hay went to California, but we find out that really Don is the source of that information.
Yeah,
and that Don is the one that said Hay went to California.
Yeah, and it was more than that. If memory serves, they completely misstated that evidence. They said in their reading, I believe it was Debbie's statement. It might have been Becky's, but I think it was Debbie's. And they say that Adnan wasn't concerned at all about Hay being missing because he thought she had just gone to California.
Mm-hmm.
And then you read her statement, and what it actually says is it doesn't single Adnan out at all. It says everyone wasn't concerned. No one at all was concerned until that party, because we all thought she was with Don. So first of all, it wasn't Adnan. It was everyone that wasn't concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, they didn't think that she was in California. They thought she was at Don's, and they just completely misstated that. And then she goes on to say which seems like this question must have come up, because in the notes it says she said that no, the California rumor didn't come up till later, which we find out later that when you source through all the documents, the California rumor came first from Don talking to the Anihi group, who was the private investigators that were helping out the family. He said that she thought she had gone off to California. Then he talks to Debbie. They have that 7-hour phone conversation. After that, then Debbie brings the California rumor into the group, because that's what she heard from Don. Don was the source of the California rumor. But yeah, that was just one of the instances where, the people that got upset when I said they lied, like they lied. That's the opposite, the polar opposite of what the record actually said there.
Yeah, everything listening to that episode is saying that Adnan had, he was he didn't care that Hay was missing. He didn't seem bothered by the fact that Hay was missing at this party, but they never talk about anybody else at the party.
Right.
They only talk about him, and they say that well, it's because she's in California.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is absolutely not true. So that was another good catch, something we didn't touch on last week. And with that, I know, Janet, we have a series of questions, so we better get right into those.
We do, and I just want to start out by apologizing. We had so many questions this week that we couldn't possibly get to them all. So thank you so much for all your engagement, everybody. There are instances in which people kind of ask similar questions, so we tried to represent those in some way or other. But thank you again so much for engaging. We're going to start with some kind of more general stuff, and then we do have a lot on Adnan and Hay. So let's start with Kathy. Kathy says, "How was your Thanksgiving?" And that's for all three of us. Kathy, I want to thank you so much for not just wanting to know how one of our Thanksgivings were, but all of our
ours.
Thanksgiving.
Well, you can go first, Janet. How was yours?
Mine was wonderful. I was in Tucson with my family, and it was the weather was beautiful, and I ate lots of delicious stuff and got to see some old friends as well. And it was great. And Zach texted us on Thanksgiving, which I would say there's a little bit of a tradition. The three of us, one of us will inevitably text on a holiday like Thanksgiving and be like real sweet and say, "I'm grateful for you."
And then one of us will forget to text everyone back.
I guess that was you.
That would have been.
Seems right.
I appreciate
Seems
you
right.
guys. Thankful for you guys.
Cool. What about you, Zach?
I certainly did not accidentally become intoxicated by noon on Thanksgiving. So, but it was wonderful. That's as much as I need to go
Right.
into, because
As much as you remember.
that's as much as I remember from Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Mine was great. I actually, so I was sick last week. I was dealing with a cold that just wouldn't go away. So I was kind of dealing with that. But actually we talked a little bit in the Patreon hour that I had thought, I've got a couple days off from school and don't have an episode this week. I can use it to kind of get ahead. And I made a conscious decision not to do that. My son was in town from college, and we had a bunch of family around, and my mother's birthday was this past weekend too, which, by the way, my mother shares a birthday with Ed Ates, whose birthday was also on Monday, just yesterday when we're recording this.
Nice.
Yep. But we had our birthday party this weekend, but I really took the time to just spend some time with the family. Thanksgiving was wonderful. We didn't have a huge, but we had my folks and Becky's mom. I had all four of my kiddos home. Our oldest Jackson came with his girlfriend, and Quentin was home from college, and of course Bella and Parker were here. My niece, who just kind of didn't have anywhere else to go, came and hung out with us. We had a great Thanksgiving. And my favorite part of it was when all the old folks left, and it was just me and Becky sitting with all of our nearly adult children, and just sitting around, just having a good time, chatting for hours around the dining room table. It could have been better. I loved it. And thank you to all of you for giving all three of us the opportunity to take a weekend to just spend that time with family. Because I know, speaking for myself, I know I needed it. So I'm glad that
it was super nice.
Yeah. Well, Allison says, this is for Bob. Are you still teaching on top of putting out episodes, preparing for the next case, and the many other things you do? It seems like you're juggling a lot. Are you holding up okay?
Yeah, I am. So I'm holding up okay, and I'm yes, I'm still doing all those things. I have cut some things out for the patrons know this. For those of you guys that don't realize, I was running a little quail hatching egg business that I was raising those quail for a while. I did sell that business, and just because I needed to cut some time out, and of course I brought Janet's partner Brandon in to edit the follow-ups. That helped a lot, and so yeah, I've gotten into a much better groove with things. I feel like I've got a nice balance. I do appreciate you asking, but I am juggling a lot, but I feel like I've got a pretty good grip on things for right now.
You also cut out answering your friends on Thanksgiving to tell them how grateful you are and how much you love them. So I'm glad you were able to get that off your plate, because I'm sure that was taking up a lot of time.
It seemed redundant. I mean, that's just, I mean, how hard you got to try.
Sure.
I tell you guys all the time how much I love you guys. I don't need to do it on a special holiday. That's lame.
Yeah. Okay. Lilia says, do you ever work with organizations like the Innocence Project and smaller orgs to find cases?
Yeah, all the time. So as you guys know, we've worked quite a bit with the Innocence Project of Texas. We work with the Exoneration Project out of Illinois. We get pitched cases from Innocence organization. As a matter of fact, I had a meeting this last month with an Innocence organization that was pitching a couple cases to do for its kind of mini seasons. I haven't had too much time to really dig into the cases. They were just there was, I think both of the cases are innocent. I don't know how comfortable I'd say, like, one of them was a sexual assault case, and it's a good case. I really think the guy is innocent, but I just kind of, as a rule, don't like covering those cases because you have a living victim, and so if you have a living victim, and then now I'm going to go make a very public podcast saying, hey, this thing that you said happened to you, that did happen to you, that you think was this guy, I'm now going to come out and say it wasn't this guy that you got. It's just, I can't put a victim through that. Just some kind of behind the scenes type of stuff that I do a lot of times with a lot of case screens, that some of the things that we got to go through. But to answer your question, yeah, all the time. A lot of innocence organizations bring us cases a lot.
Yeah. Jennifer says, and I know you're here too, Jennifer. Hello. In wrongful conviction cases, the prosecution tends to rely on witness over actual hard or forensic evidence. The problem is, it seems very hard to get the case overturned because even if witnesses recant their testimony, courts usually won't consider that a reason to overturn it. And if there's little forensic evidence collected, then it's really hard to have enough to test. And clearly, the state will fight that too. If you have any thoughts on that topic or knowledge of cases where courts did overturn convictions because of unreliable witnesses or faulty testimony, I'd love to hear more about it. Great question, Jennifer.
Well, I mean, one where I hope that's going to happen is in Jesse Eldridge's case. And that's, you guys have heard me talk about that many times, how it's frustrating that Jesse is still in prison. In Jesse's case, he was convicted on one solitary piece of evidence, and that one piece of evidence was his brother saying that he witnessed him murdering Kiao Gove, who has now recanted and has passed polygraphs with the Conviction Integrity Unit to prove to them that he's telling the truth now, that he did make that up. He was coerced into doing so by the police. That should, by definition, result in his conviction being overturned, but there haven't been any writs filed with the court yet. And that's one of the problems you have the good thing about working with the Conviction Integrity Unit is that, they're on your side. The bad thing about it is that you're kind of working on their timeline. So hopefully that'll happen. As for other than that, I don't know of any cases specifically, but there are 3 of the 4 cases that the detectives in Adnan's case, Ritz and McGillivray, worked, where exonerations came because of their corruption. 3 of them were based on false witness statements. The catch is they weren't released. I'm trying to remember the names. One was Ezra Mabel. There's a Burgess was the last name of one. I can't remember the third one's name. They were all revolving around witness statements that were false witness statements where people had recanted. But that was not the reason that the convictions were overturned. They weren't released based on actual innocence. They were released based on Brady violations and corruption by the police. So someone may have to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe it was Ezra Mabel's case was the one where a witness was threatened by Ritz to have her children taken away. I believe she always maintained that someone else had committed the murder, and he essentially not essentially, I mean, the way the ruling came down, if I'm thinking of the right case, told this witness that if she didn't say that Ezra did it, then he was going to have her children taken away, because of course she was a person of color with drug issues, I believe, in Baltimore. And so he used that to leverage her to say what he wanted her to say, which again is why the whole idea, the point that people make, the prosecutors make, that, oh, this is some, you're believing some grand conspiracy. In this case, you don't have to wonder if Ritz and McGillivray would coerce somebody into giving false testimony in order to get a conviction, because we know that they have done it before. They have been caught doing it before. But kind of circling back to your question, so Ezra wasn't released on actual innocence because the statement was false. He was released on Brady violations, I believe, because there was other exculpatory statements that were withheld that they didn't share with the defense, and then the coercion of the other one. So they were like constitutional issues. So it's a little more complicated of a question than just, if somebody recants, then does that equal a wrongful conviction. You have to find the constitutional violations within there in order to get the conviction overturned.
Yeah, it's like if you're lucky, a sloppy enough job was done that would include witness intimidation. If you don't have enough and you're sort of reaching and intimidating people and threatening them, because we do hear about that. That's certainly not the only time we've heard about an officer taking something in a witness's personal life and using it against them to give the answer that they want. That's just not as uncommon as some would like to think.
Right.
And then you sort of hope that, maybe the witness recantation is the thing that gets the attention of someone. And then you really have to just get in there and get granular and hope that there is something that the court will pay more attention to when it comes to Brady or, other reasons to overturn. But Jennifer, you're right. It's so frustrating.
Yeah. And there is I'm going to possibly speak out of turn here, but I want to say it's a Fourth Amendment due process violation that can be considered if you were convicted based on false testimony, that can be used as a due process violation and a constitutional violation in and of itself. It's pretty rare, though. We saw it with Kerry Max Cook's case, where in order to get an actual innocence exoneration, you have to disprove every element of the state's case. So it's not like it's not a reasonable doubt standard or a preponderance of evidence standard. You literally have to disprove everything. And in Kerry's case, the entire state's case was destroyed, except for one of the elements that was used to convict him was a Smith County sheriff who testified that Kerry confessed to him while in an elevator in the middle of his trial. So that was
Give me a break.
And that sheriff had died. And so it was cited in the order, or in the judge's ruling, that he couldn't disprove that element of evidence. So it gets very complicated to get an actual innocence exoneration. Pretty much you have to somehow disprove everything, or in most cases when we have that, it's when the evidence actually proves someone else did it. So you find the DNA, Michael Morton, for example, they finally test the evidence on the pair of underwear and find the actual killer's DNA on there. Now we know it was him, and therefore it couldn't be him, and then he was exonerated. But it's a very difficult task. That's why you see people don't, we talked about a little bit about this in the Pinyon Pine case, what they're going to use in the appeals when they file their state habeas. And it's like there's the practical and factual elements of a case where you and I can look at the evidence and say, oh, well, they're innocent. I know that because of this, but that has to meet a certain standard for an appeals court. So just because we can look at it logically and practically and see, oh, that means that he probably was innocent, or that he was innocent, that doesn't necessarily meet the standard. They have to attack from all angles and find the place where they can find a clear-cut constitutional violation. Right.
Well, let's get into some more specific stuff regarding Adnan or Hay. Ivana says, I just want to ask a general question concerning your relationship with Nick and the captain. We've talked about this before. I was beyond disappointed when they supported the prosecutors on their podcast. Not only did they give their platform to once again present their POV, but they actually agreed with them. How can I trust anything they say about other cases they present on their show? Is there something we can do, like write the guys, ask to have the other side presented? Ivana says, am I the only one who can't get past this? You're not, Ivana. I think Daniel said something about it, even in just this most recent Facebook follow-up post. I think Jesse maybe did too. But in general, I've seen a lot of chatter about that just on the internets. And I know, Bob, in the past, you've said, I'm not going to invite myself on, but if they want to have me come on to argue the point, I would do it. So I don't know. I know Bob's not going to tell you guys to make noise about it, but I think you should.
Yeah,
Bob, you can stay out of this if you want, but sure. I mean, that was irresponsible. And it made me really sad, Ivana, to read, how can I trust anything they say about other cases? That's the kind of the risky thing that's a risk you take when you have let someone come on and give a point of view, and it's wrong. I don't know.
So I don't fault them for that. And here's why. So if you listen to the episode, and I did, Nick doesn't know a whole lot about the case, or he didn't didn't propose, he didn't conduct himself as though he knows a whole lot about the case. They're just bringing on fellow podcasters. They've always been supportive of other podcasters, including mine, and they're bringing them on. There's also other things, I have, and I'm not saying this would happen. I don't know. There's a lot of times we'll get promotions, like if you're through the same distributor, they might say, hey, could you have somebody from this one on to help them promote their thing or whatever. But if you listen to it, what you did here is Captain pushing back. The problem is Captain knows a lot about the case, but he obviously, at least these years later, didn't have a great grasp on it. But there were several occasions in there where Captain did try to push back, but he didn't have all the facts necessarily in front of him, and then that ended. He wasn't able to make his point. And then the other thing that you have to remember is Captain and Nick aren't investigators, right? That's not their job. And lots of people were convinced and manipulated by the prosecutor. That's why I'm doing the reply brief. So I'm not mad at somebody because they listened to their coverage without a super duper in-depth knowledge of the case and were convinced by their coverage. Because that was their whole point. They were very good at doing that. So I'm not mad at them at all about that. Now, we've just recently started putting ours out on the public feed. I will tell you, I have a great relationship with Nick and Captain. I've been talking to the Captain. He's got a wrongful conviction case that he sent me that he I talked to him at length on the phone a couple weeks ago, that he's thinking would be a great one for Truth and Justice, that he wants me to cover a case that he's passionate about. Like I said, I'm not going to invite myself on the show. If they ask me to, I would imagine they would want to do that after the series is over, if that happens. So all I would say is everybody do whatever you want, but for me, I'm not mad at those guys. They had another podcaster on who was, they were making some noise in the space at that point. They seem to have made, don't forget, the internet and social media was full of people saying they proved Adnan is guilty.
Right.
Because people got convinced by them. And again, if you're just taking from what other people said and haven't actually listened to it, I recommend you listen to the episode, because Captain is trying to push back on it. He wasn't just accepting what they fed him, but he didn't have all the facts to ask the exact right questions. And Brett and Alice were very quick to put their spin on things when they throw it back. There are little things on there. I think I mentioned in one of the reply brief episodes when we were talking about Hayes' pickup time from school, how in their episode they had pushed it back. They said it was 3:20, which gave a little bit more time for Adnan to do it. And it was there that time doesn't exist anywhere on the record. On True Crime Garage, Brett says it was 3:30 was the pickup. They just keep, so when they're saying these things and speaking with authority, that's all I'll say is I don't think anybody should be mad at them for that. If you guys want to send them I feel like an asshole telling people, because I could just call either one of them and talk about it. But yeah, I don't have any issue if somebody say, hey, you should have Bob on. I could certainly do the same thing, but it's just not my style. I'll just wait and see what they want to do, but I'd be happy to do that. And I would guess that would probably happen. Myself, Nick, and Captain have been really good friends for a really long time. And I do trust those guys.
They're very good guys.
Yeah. Well, I guess nobody had the facts in front of them when they had that conversation, so it's not their fault.
Right.
Nobody had facts.
Right.
Nobody was discussing facts, I guess. Okay. Robin says, all things track practice. I'm so confused. Has Adnan specifically said that the ride from Hay to the track was a normal thing? If it was normal, why would she not have time that day before she picked up her cousin? If this info isn't from Adnan, then who said it was normal? There's a lot of questions here, but they're all related and they're all good. Was there a call to Adnan's cell phone after track practice asking Jay to pick up? If Adnan has stated that he didn't give Jay the phone to use, has he said how Jay knew when to pick him up? Is there proof or a statement from anyone that Adnan ever called his own cell phone while Jay had it? I don't know if you want to do all of that at once or take it piece by piece, but
I'll try to tackle it all at once. And if you can remind me if I'm missing something.
Great.
The ride to track practice. So I don't know. I think Adnan may have mentioned that he's gotten rides like around the school. I don't know for sure if he ever has. Where that information comes from and where I try to base most of my facts off of. So Adnan's one being accused. So I don't really care what he has to say. I want to know what other uninvolved witnesses with nothing to lose or nothing to gain have to say. And there was a couple different statements. One in particular that sticks out in my mind was Debbie. Debbie was interviewed, and she said that Adnan got rides from Hay almost daily from the front of the school to the back of the school. Mm-hmm. So she's leaving to go pick up her cousin. He would hop in her car and she would cruise him around to the back of the school for track practice. So that came independent of Jay or Adnan or anybody. That came from Debbie. I believe there's a couple other people that mentioned the same thing, but that's the one that's sticking out. And I know that because I was arguing with somebody on Twitter the other day about it, and they accused me of lying about that, so I had to grab that screenshot. So I remember specifically that one from Debbie's to put on there, because I can't ignore people as much as I would like to. Terrible at it.
I wish you'd get off Twitter.
I was gonna say it's all so easy when you're just not on it anymore.
It was so bad because there was a guy on there that was talking to me who thinks he's guilty, which is fine, but we were having like a good conversation. Like he was asking reasonable questions and was being reasonable, and we were discussing facts back and forth. And then there was like this one dude. I ended up blocking him, but it was just like, it's like having a toddler grabbing at your leg when you're trying to have an adult conversation with somebody. This guy throwing all this bullshit out. Anyway, so that's where that came from. As far as the phone, like that wasn't part of the question, but Adnan has never said that he gave Jay the phone. In fact, he specifically said he didn't give it to him. It just was in the glove box. The call to pick him up from track practice, I personally don't think there ever was a call. Adnan, to my knowledge, has never addressed this, but if you look at the call log, people will say, the prosecutors say, and I think I've even heard like on the undisclosed team say, they assume there was a call drawn from memory somewhere at like 5:18 or 5:08 or 5:15, somewhere around there, that they assume that incoming call was the come get me call. I don't think that's true. Track practice usually went to 5:30. And
just
there's
tell
other
someone when to be there.
Yeah, and there's more calls after that. What we have is an outgoing call from the phone to Krista at 5:38. Since track practice generally got over at 5:30, to me, I think he just told Jay, pick him up at 5:30, and he just showed up and picked him up at 5:30. I don't think that I personally don't think there was a call to pick him up at track practice. But again, this narrative, and this is something that we'll get into when you get to part 9, where we get into the actual statement analysis of Jay's interview. There's a huge, huge fuck up in that narrative that McGillivray was creating. And I think and if you read the transcript, even if you're not on Patreon and you're not all the way caught up, I have all the documents that have been discussed all the way up through part 9 on the website. So you can go read Jay's transcript. You can do any of that if you go to season 14 on the website. And it's pretty obvious that this is not Jay's story. It's McGillivrary's story. And that's not tap, tap, tap. That's not any kind of, literally you hear him saying it. So this is what Jay actually says. And if you're on the fan page, you saw that I made this post. And for those of you that haven't heard part 9.5 yet, you may have been wondering where that came from. But what Jay actually said, so the first interview, he just says he took Adnan back to school. That's all he says. In the second interview, he says, after they go to Patapsco again and smoke weed and everything, that he took Adnan back to school. And then that's all he says. And he's asked, why did he take him back to school? And Jay says, to be seen by co-students, I guess. Nothing about track practice. And then he's asked, where did he drop him off? And Jay says he dropped him off in the front circle and to go in the front door. That's when I realized something. And that's one of the great things about doing this reply brief series, going through all of this again, is I finding things that I've missed. I had never caught that before. As a matter of fact, I sent that to Rabia and asked her, has anybody ever caught that before? And to her knowledge, no one had, at least not that she remembered. The Jay said he dropped him off at the front door, at the front circle of the school. And what that indicates to us is Adnan was on the indoor track team. They normally practiced indoor. That season ran from November to February. They only went outside and ran if it was above 50. Coach Tsai said if it's above 50, that's a great time to get outside and run. They would go outside and run. Generally, practice was held indoors. What became very clear is that McGillivray, at that point, didn't know that practice was outside that day. So he leads Jay into saying very specifically, where'd you drop him off? Describe it. And what we haven't talked about yet, and we don't talk about, so I'll mention it here, Jay gave a third, well, I think there was a bunch more interviews, but after the second recorded interview, 3 days later, there's another interview where Jay does a drive along, and there's notes for that are up on the website as well, where they're marking where Jay's driving them, showing them everywhere they went. And it's insane and asinine if you follow these places to try to make the timeline fit. But he specifically says we go down Security Boulevard, we go up Woodlawn Drive to the front circle. I drop Adnan off at the front door of the school. The problem is track wasn't at the front of the school. Track wasn't at the school at all. It was all the way down at the track, which is behind the school, another quarter mile down the hill, way down there. So that was a huge mistake that was made. But so that's how it goes. Jay says he dropped him off at school, the front circle, the front door, to be seen by co-students. Then McGillivray says, was he there to be at some kind of event? And then Jay says, oh yeah, track practice. So that's where that all comes out. It wasn't until Jay's second time through, the second interview, on McGillivray's prompting, do we ever hear about track practice, that he kind of nudged him into saying that there was track practice, but he gets the location wrong. Getting back to what you were talking about, just kind of putting some of that information out there. As far as the pickup goes, Jay also says Adnan called him to pick him up. And what I've always said, what I've said all the way back in 2015, was, where did he call him from? He's down at the track. There's no phone down at the track. He doesn't have his cell phone. So if track doesn't get over till 5:30 or even say 5 o'clock, he's got to get all the way back up. Like, none of that makes sense until I realized that Jay said he dropped him off and picked him up both at the front of the school. And so the call that Jay says happened came from the payphone inside the front of the school, not from down at the track. So, which again cements into my theory, in my mind, that there was no call to pick him up. I mean, the whole thing is made up. But we do know from Will, who was interviewed, one of the track players, or track teammates, who was interviewed on Serial. He said, I don't know if he picked him up from track that day, because Jay used to pick him up from track all the time. So for all of you people out there that say, well, there's this one time, why would he give him his phone and his car? Well, he did it all the time. According to his own teammates, he couldn't say if it was that day, because Jay would very often have Adnan's car while he was at track practice, and then Jay would pick him up. So it seems like there was probably, that's a really long-winded answer to your well, it's a long question, so you deserve it.
Well, you could also see how someone could say then they were really close friends, because if it happened all the time, then they were spending a ton of time together, and therefore they must have been
maybe,
really
but who
close friends.
cares?
I just want to quickly address, there was one thing in there that we didn't really touch on, which is that Robin said if it was normal for this to happen, why wouldn't she have time the day that she picked up her cousin? If she was always picking up her cousin and she was always dropping Adnan off, why wouldn't she have time? And the answer is because she had something else to do. And that is what we were all wondering, what that was, where she went, because it was a small window of time. It was small enough that she didn't have time to give Adnan a ride, if you put everything into the context of what we've heard from witnesses.
Yeah, so exactly right. So something came up. She said that she had something else to do. That's why and even we hear in either Becky or Debbie's statement that their friend Takira also asked her, hey, could I get a ride? And she said, I can't. I've got something to do. They said in one of the statements, I think Debbie said that she told her she was going to see Don at the mall, which doesn't make a lot of sense, because she definitely wouldn't have had time to go to the mall and then get back to pick up her cousin to see Don. So who knows? But she did say she had something to do. Another thing that I want to point out that just popped in my head, that's for the Adnan asked for a ride, and that's why would he ask for a ride? Here's a little circular argument for you. So they explain away Becky saying that she witnessed, hey, tell Adnan that she couldn't give him a ride because something came up and she had something to do, and she saw him walking away in different directions. We get around that. Debbie sees Adnan in the office, and then sees also Hay at the front door getting ready to leave. All these things that they say, well, they must have the wrong day. Well, let's look at specifically Becky. The same people that say Becky must have had the wrong day, because that's what fits their narrative, also say that it was odd for Adnan to ask for a ride. But do you see the circular logic there? So their reasoning for Becky getting that wrong is because Adnan asked Hay for a ride on a different day. But they also say Adnan only asked her for a ride on that one day. It's interesting logic. And one last thing that I want to add on while we're talking about track, and I'm just feeling kind of zing-zangy today, whatever that means. I don't know if anybody knew this. I did a ton of research. The reason I'm spewing all this out is because I did a ton of research on the track practice over this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
How many people do you think were on the track team?
12
Can't have been that many. Was it a huge team?
We heard Brett and Alice saying that they wouldn't have noticed Adnan because all of the students that were Muslim wouldn't have been running, and he wasn't one of the best athletes, so they wouldn't have noticed him there. There's 2 coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a guess.
I'm gonna say 12.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. It seems like it's supposed to be a big school. So and the way they're talking, I would say there's 40 plus.
The way they talked on the prosecutors. Yes. 8. 8, including Adnan.
I was afraid I was being generous when I said 12.
Yeah, there were 8 players on the track team. Adnan was the only Muslim one on the track team that was fasting during Ramadan. So now when you start to think about them not noticing, also in Coach Tsai's statements when he talks to private investigator, you go through all of his statements. He actually says, it's either him or Coach Russell, I don't remember which one of them said very specifically that no one walked down late from the school. They would have noticed someone walking down late from the school, wow. Which becomes a big fucking problem when your actual story, not the one where everybody just says Jay dropped Adnan off at track practice, but when the story is actually that Jay dropped Adnan off up at the school, there's only 8 players, only 8 members of the team. Seems a heck of a lot less likely that he slid in an hour and a half late from the school and didn't get noticed.
It's preposterous. It's preposterous. All right. Okay, let's see. We still have a lot to cover. I'm going to jump around a little bit. I want to talk about Kay. Kay had a bunch of really interesting notes. Some of them are a bit long, and I wanted to kind of truncate them, but I also felt like there was just a lot of really important nuggets in here. I apologize for using nuggets for those of you who don't care for that word. I don't think I care for that word, but I said it anyway. Okay. So, Kay, I'm actually going to start with this one. Is Leakin Park along the route between the high school and where Hay was supposed to pick up her cousin? If Hay pulled over somewhere to change her skirt while sitting in her car, she could have possibly been attacked there. Dragged into the park, laid flat. That could explain the lividity. And then the murderer could have returned later in the dark of night to bury the body. Obviously, just a theory. Just wanted to see if that sparks anything with anyone.
It's definitely not on the way. So the school is northeast from the high school. Leakin Park is southeast. It's definitely not on that route. And I have a whole. We're already. I said we were going to be done by 9:00, and I'm already running.
Guess who's responsible for that?
That's me because I talk too much. So I'll try to speed it. But I have. Here's the thing: the whole changing her skirt thing does provide an opportunity for someone to intercept her, which opens up another range of possibilities of suspects. I have a hard time believing it because of the car, right? If she was intercepted somewhere, caught and abducted, then how and why did they take the car? To me, everything about this says personal cause homicide, someone with a known personal relationship. But to answer your question, I'm going to stop talking so long. To answer your question, no, it's not on the way. So it would be a weird thing for her to have driven there to go change.
Okay. Kay also has a long and very interesting part about the car and officers from a different area running the plates. Do you want to get into that now? That almost feels like it could work in an upcoming reply brief follow-up. Because I think we do talk about the car a bit more.
Because we're long and we haven't covered that stuff yet, let's go ahead and buzz past that one for now.
Let's hang on to that. And Kay, on one of the, I don't know. I just want to make sure, I don't want to forget it because it's really interesting and good. So I hope that I will remember that and bring it back up when it's timely. Y'all can help me remember that. Okay. Then Kay also says, regarding the anonymous tip to police, obviously we don't know who made the call or for what reason, but if Adnan never said those words to Yasser, that if he ever did anything to Hay, etc., and if the call came in 3 days after the body was found, it seems possible that the call could have been made by someone connected to the murder who was trying to misdirect the police, possibly because they had a known connection to Hay. Do we know if, for example, Bilal knew Yasser or if he was friends with him or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, all we can do is speculate about that. Personally, I think that it was a game of telephone. From if you read the interview with Yasser, um, he pretty much says that it sounded like he said to someone else that he thought that if Adnan had done something like that, that's he would have put the car in the lake. And then someone else heard that and then told the police that Adnan said that to Yasser directly. And then Yasser said, no, that's not what happened. So that's what it seems like to me, is people just kind of talking, speculating, and then it got spun into that. Because
I don't know about that.
I mean, it could have been. It's possible that it could have been used to, for someone misdirecting. We just don't know. I mean, so is that theory possible? Absolutely. I don't know how to figure it out at this point. But as far as Bilal's connection to Yasser, I don't know.
Okay. Jessica says, did any of the persons of interest live on the route Hay would have taken from Woodlawn to the Early Learning Center?
You may have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think you might know this better than me, Janet, but I believe that Alonzo Sellers did live somewhere up near that area,
or had a relative who was right near there,
something like that. But also he was technically still clocked into work until 4:00.
Right. Veronica says, could you, and I rephrased this a little bit just for time, Veronica, could you go over Adcock's call to Adnan the night Hay was reported missing and how he knew to call Adnan?
Yeah, so that was because I believe the story goes, Adcock comes over around 5:30. They're worried about Hay. Young, her brother, gets out Hay's diary, and he thinks that she's probably with her boyfriend Don. Opens the diary to the page with all the Dons on it, sees the phone number, and calls that number thinking he's calling Don, but it was actually Adnan on the phone. So then I believe then he gave that number to Adcock to call Adnan.
Okay. And then just kind of connected to that, Sue says, Hay's brother called Adnan, though he thought it was Don's number. It was just covered after 6 p.m. and she hadn't picked up the cousin at daycare at 3 or 3:15 p.m. When was she formally reported as a missing person? Sue apologizes if this was mentioned. Sue, that's why we do these. Sometimes you got to circle the facts a bunch of times before they stick. So
yeah, I'd have to go back to the episode to get the exact time on the report. We did cover it. But it was during that. So around in the 5:00 hour, it was when it happened. Somewhere in the 5:00 hour is when Adcock, they called the police. Adcock came and started his missing person report.
Okay. Lori says, is Hay's murder actually being reinvestigated and by who? Or is this a situation where they realize the evidence used will not hold for a retrial? So they're just vacating the conviction, but now they're done.
That's the whole reason we're doing this. Because so Marilyn Mosby declared that she believes Adnan is innocent. She vacated the conviction and declared that she and her office are reinvestigating this case. Then, of course, we have all these appeals that are going on right now. It's up to the Maryland Supreme Court, trying to decide if Adnan's conviction should stay overturned or if it should be reinstated. But in the midst of that, this whole prosecutor series comes out. So what we had was you had a DA that was vowing to investigate the case, and you had a ton of public pressure for that office to reinvestigate the case and figure out who did it. And they were doing that. Like they were looking, they were testing DNA. They were digging through that's how they found the Brady violations that where Urich had hid evidence from the defense. And then all of a sudden the pressure gets snatched away by these people coming through and trying to convince all the people that were applying the pressure that you're on the wrong side of justice here. Adnan's guilty. And then Marilyn Mosby's out now. Ivan Bates is in. There's a new prosecutor. I don't know what he's going to do, but what I do know is what it's going to take for it to be reinvestigated is continued pressure for us to have not just a bunch of people screaming on the internet, but people who have a clear understanding of this case and can make the argument. I say this in the later reply briefs, the one that's coming out this Sunday for the patrons. I say it over and over again. That's why that T-shirt that I made that I want to put out that says "Ask me how I know Adnan's innocent." There's a very specific purpose I'm doing this. It's not just to convince you. It is to correct the record, and I'm trying to. This sounds arrogant, and I don't mean it to sound that way, but I'm trying to teach you what the record actually says in a digestible manner so that you can articulate and defend the fact that Adnan is innocent, so that we can intelligently put that pressure on to the state's attorney's office to investigate this case, to find out who actually killed Hae Min Lee. It's going to take that pressure, and it's going to take more than noise. It's going to take intelligent, articulated evidence. And that's what I want out of our audience. The Truth and Justice audience, the Truth and Justice Army for all these years has been such a powerful force in providing truth and justice and pushing those issues and putting on that pressure. And I believe in all of you that you can help get this done, but you have to have a full understanding of what really happened and what the record really says.
I love everything you just said. That's a bit of a mic drop. I think Zach just acted that out. Yeah. And also, again, it just brings up for me, it's just so frustrating, and it's so disingenuous when people say that people who are interested in wrongful convictions are focused only on the person who's been wrongfully convicted, when we have made it clear time and time again that we're not just defending Adnan. We are defending Hae. We are asking for the right thing to be done and for the right person to be held responsible. No one's saying let's walk away and have a picnic if Adnan is, free. No one is saying that. That's 50% of what we're here to do.
If that.
Anyway, if that. Okay, so let's move on quickly. You want to end it there? Okay. Yeah. All right.
Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon.
Brandon,
double mic drop.
Zach acted out a double mic drop. So let's just, that will be the end. Bring the music in right after that. We don't even need to say goodbye. We'll say goodbye to you people on YouTube. I'm going to hit stop on the record.
Yeah.
But we can get the rest of the questions later.
Yeah, no, I'll hold these. The nice thing is that because they're not episode specific, they can apply to future stuff.
Yeah. Hang on, I gotta real quick tell Monopoly fan to go fuck themselves and block them from the channel. There we go.
Those comments were so vague. I didn't understand. I didn't understand them. I was like, I guess someone is saying, oh, I see. Yeah, it's fake.
Yeah.
I have no feelings. Doesn't everyone know?
Yeah.
You're
Isn't
a good
it obvious?
actress.
I don't feel anything.
Oh,
it's adorable.
Monopoly couldn't
actor fire.
Monopoly tried to hold it together by just making vague statements that made no sense and had nothing to do with anything, but were supposed to be like confrontational or like, ooh, you're stirring it up, but it's like none of it made sense.
How mad would you guys be if you guys found out that all these were just me with like sock accounts just sitting over here, just like,
I would love it.
Watch this. I'm gonna piss Bob off. Right in the middle of the podcast, I'm gonna piss Bob off.
I hope. I'm excited. I should so much be waiting for the reply briefs to come out, like where I really dig into but like this track stuff. So that was, I didn't work, meaning I didn't write scripts, but I was like digging and found like the PI notes from Coach Tsai and Coach Russell and all that, because I was. When I realized that Jay said that he dropped Adnan off at the front of the school, it's like, wait a fucking minute. This doesn't add up at all.
Yeah.
He pulled me in on that one early before I had any clue, before I listened to any of this. He's like, look at this map. Look at this.
Oh, yeah, I showed it to you.
Yeah. You're like, if someone were to say they dropped you off in the front at the circle, where would you point it out? I'm like, well, I guess it'd be right here.
Conrad wants to know Monopoly type. Now, he insulted, I believe, Janet, which I don't put up.
Oh yeah, he said that he or she said that my outrage was fake, which is so stupid. Like my feelings are hurt really easily because I actually do have feelings. Weirdly, sorry, Monopoly. I've never been more confident that it's obvious that I have feelings that I have trouble repressing. It's not necessarily a good thing, but it is real. So I'm feeling pretty okay about that.
I will not text you on Thanksgiving, but I will boot a motherfucker out of the chat when they start talking shit.
Appreciate that.
All right. All of you guys who have joined us on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us and participating with us.
I like this comment.
Which one?
This one. Come on.
Rena's?
No, this one.
Zach is the ultimate troll. I like Rena's.
The adorable troll.
They won't get out of jail. Well done.
But seriously, all the posts were so good, and I'm sorry we didn't have time for everything, but I will hold on to these.
Yep.
Sorry that Bob took 45 minutes to answer one question.
Oh, I got on a roll. I'm so totally re-obsessed with this case now that I can't stop talking about it.
There was a minute when we were like going, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not the question Janet asked. Like, I don't know where you're at, but I'm pretty sure that's not.
All I know. Thank you so much, Vern, for the super chat. All I know is they mentioned track. And so I was like, oh, everything I've ever known about track is all going to get spewed out right fucking now. That's what's going to happen next.
It was very interesting. All that stuff. And Conrad, I see you in there. Conrad's been doing some homework too. Conrad knew about the track numbers and stuff. That was really interesting information to get because I definitely did not know.
I was stunned when I saw, because
that feels like something that would have come up. I mean,
I've never researched how many people were on the track team. And I listened to the prosecutors talking about all the people and how all the Muslim kids that were fasting weren't running, and that they were not paying attention to Adnan because he wasn't one of the star athletes. So they weren't doing it. And I was like, there's 8 motherfucking people on that team.
I like that Janet used my own number against me too.
She did. Well, you said 12 and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she said 12. Jennifer says she did track and cross country, and that is all she can contribute.
Wonderful. That's all we need.
Oh, all right. I promise, Janet has been working all day and hasn't got to eat yet, so we're gonna put a stop to
JV,
this.
There's snow here. I have to drive home in snow.
Boys.
Currently 17 degrees without the wind chill.
I'm chilly because I think it's like 69 in here.
Up top, my brother. That's a Jimmy Pardo joke. And Cynthia says that, Clinda says that Adnan was at least the 8th best on the team. That's exactly right. And real quick, Tiffany, thank you so much for the super chat. And I'm told to rein it in. And that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Listen, it's going to be a whole lot more than $2 for Bob to rein it in.
Yeah. And Devin says, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
She was really talking to me and Janet. Devin was definitely talking to me and Janet, not you.
I think so. Me. And Devin, if your sister's here, if you're in here, thank you so much. Danielle has been shipping out Patreon t-shirts. She is on the ball. I appreciate her so much for doing that. All right, I'm going to end this YouTube thing, and then in a second we'll end the. Oh, we got another one. Thank you guys. We appreciate these so much. Grayson Soccer had and has the most players at Woodlawn. I forget. Grayson used to work at Woodlawn. Thanks, Grayson, for the super chat and the information. It's good to know.
Yeah.
My school was like that too. Our football team sucked because all the good athletes were playing soccer, and they won the state championship.
Gotta respect that.
And we didn't. Okay, I'm going to end the YouTube. Make sure there's nothing over there. Thanks everybody.
Bye everybody.
Be on the YouTube.
We love ya.